The darker side of the next nation, Echiness and Anopian. Welcome to part 2 of Impossible Lands Next, part of the Where in the World series here on Cardinal Adventures. Echiness, also known as the military heart of Nex. It is the war machine that allows Nex to bear enough of a presence to fight Geb should the tenuous peace between the nations fall apart at a moment's notice. Echiness is a 15th level settlement with a respectable population of over 23,000. Unlike Quantium, it consists of 90% humans, 3% gnomes, 1% Gorons, and 6% other. When it comes to the languages spoken primarily within Echiness, it is Kelish, Osiriani, and Vudrani. The publicly revered deities consist of Akriti, Abadar, Aurori, Nethys, and Pharasma. Its unique characteristic is major militarization. The overzealous and often intentionally traumatized military police of Echiness impose strict curfews, ask for papers, and generally don't trust anyone. The military police's attitude towards anyone they do not immediately recognize, especially foreigners, is one step worse than normal. As a game master, be sure to really emphasize this distrustful atmosphere, even as your players arrive at the city gates, which I could only imagine is also managed by the military police. But now that you've made it past the gate, where would you want to visit in such a welcoming city? Up first, Aleilam Awal Wat Nex, otherwise known as the Eldforge of Nex. It is located on the northwest side of the city, with an Arcana-powered river running beneath it. Formerly the most stalwart flesh forge, it now lies dormant most of the year. It was known for creating copies of large, rare beasts from the material plane during its peak use all those years ago. The second notable location is Elalami Aldacris. In the heart of the city sits 4 flesh forges that face each cardinal direction. They are the newest flesh forges that are more appealing to the eye, but their true purpose is to churn out flesh forges from the heart of the city should it come under attack. Third is Aleilami Alcaris, otherwise known as the Outer Flesh Forges. These flesh forges flank each of the city gates. For many millennia, these forges ran around the clock, but production has died back in the past century due to Dun Povlar's order. We'll learn more about him later. The fourth location worth mentioning is the Ekanusi Eye Academis. The Echiness Academy, also known as the Echiness War College, is for those pursuing a military career. Being that Echiness is a militaristic settlement, this is a highly trafficked and popular area. Fifth in line is the Ekanusi Madrasat Almore, otherwise known as the Echiness Skirmish School. It is known for producing some of the most formidable and fearsome evokers across the Inner Sea, with Nantambu as its only rival. The school's basic training is only 2 years long, 6 months of intense martial training and 18 months of arcane study. But how training is conducted during times of war is really what sets the school apart from anywhere else. During times of open war, the 2-year basic training is heavily abridged into a 2-month, that's right, only 2-month intensive training known as skirmish mind streaming. Successful graduates of this type of training are known as mind streamers. Mind streamers who continue their training even learn how to train while dreaming through the use of enchantment magic, so there's no downtime in between learning new magical concepts. The last notable location is Ialvaisaya. It translates to the word the awful, as it gives Echiness its partially horrific display. It was created from an explosion of what was once a flesh forge, which later became known as the Evisceration. It reeks of viscera, wet, living flesh, and digestion. One must have permission to even get nearby it, as it still conjures creatures of its own from time to time. Anything from mindless oozing creepers to more intelligent shape-shifting visages that resemble citizens that live in the area. Most of the threats are dispatched by the city's battle mages, but volunteers are always welcome. Well, Liam, if they have battle mages, couldn't they just have come together and dispelled what was formerly a flesh forge? You see, that would work if Nex himself hadn't protected the flesh forges from Gebites tampering with them. So unfortunately, there are no mages powerful enough, at least for now, to dispel it. But hey, that could make for a wonderful high-level adventure. Nex isn't a very family-oriented nation as a whole, with the exception of Echiness. The Ekanusi are recognized as the wards of Nex, and they wear their title with the utmost pride. Although there is no official declaration of war between Nex and Geb, enthusiasm that a war will be reignited keeps the city of Echiness well-funded and well-manned. Not every military member becomes one by choice, though. Should someone be found guilty of a severe crime in Nex, they are often faced with the decision between being sent to the Valkus Isle, never to be seen again, or join the Nexian military. Being that Echiness is a militaristic-focused city, it offers many benefits for serving the nation. Members of the military often have no lodging or living expenses, but that may or may not be due to facing wild and magical beasts outside of the city for weeks at a time, only to rest for 1 week and then return out to the waste and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. However, the honor that comes with being a member of the Nex military doesn't bear the same honor it did during the war between Nex and Geb. It's gotten to the point where small groups of veterans have contemplated starting another war just to relive those old glory days and show the noobs what real fear is. I don't know, could make for a solid adventure or even a full-blown campaign. Culturally speaking, Echiness is in an odd place. When the oldest flesh forge in 4704 AR stopped working, no one blinked an eye. It took a flesh forge exploding to realize the magnitude of danger the flesh forges could pose if left unchecked. The evisceration not only affected the city, but it also shook the confidence and pride its people once had. The results speak for themselves. No one trusts outsiders. People are nervous when they walk by the flesh forges of the city, hoping they don't all explode one day, leaving Echiness to be nothing but an embarrassing failure of a city. Game masters really try to lay on the feeling of dread amongst the civilians of Echiness, should your PCs ever visit. There are 4 factions within Echiness worth mentioning. The first is the Attendee. These are the Flesh Forge technicians of Echiness. They spend most of their time researching how to repair, redesign, or reconstruct the Flesh Forges to ensure long-term use with little to no deterioration. The second faction is the Death Sealers. I mentioned them in Next Part 1, but these are high-ranking members of society with at least 2 decades of experience or have documented proof of their skills in the field. Think of the Death Sealers as specialized undead hunters. Most of their efforts are put into destroying undead within the mana wastes, but from time to time they have to look within Nex to sniff out and eliminate any Gebite subterfuge. The third faction is the Scabs. Unlike the lovely name would sound, this actually is a moniker given to wards who spend most of their waking hours attempting to quell the awful. Many of them journey into it, but even the seasoned Scabs aren't guaranteed a safe return. The survival rate has improved over the years thanks to the enchanted suits of glass and leather being constructed for them by the artisans of Alkenstar and arcanists of Anopian. The fourth and final faction of note are the Waste Wards. Composed of prisoners and deserters of Nex, Waste Wards are those who are faced with joining the Nexian military or being sent to the Valkus Isle, which is pretty much a death sentence. They also go through the traumatic harrowing process I mentioned earlier, which is mind streaming, so they can be quickly deployed into the mana wastes. Although waste wards have a high mortality rate, a decade of service earns them their citizenship back and the title of ward in the Nexian military. As stated earlier, Echiness's government is quite militaristic and has 3 major positions of import. One of these positions is the principal flesh forger, which is held by Dun Povlar. The principal flesh forger is seen as the chief, or top dog, flesh forger of Echiness, while also being a sort of governor. The second is the mind forger of Echiness, held by Hectala de Jacques, whose job it is to shape the culture, announce new laws, enforce social norms within Echiness, manage communications regarding Nexus security, and maintaining the skirmish school. The third and final position is the principal spirit forger, held by Emir Amaranthine, who is in charge of Echiness's overall morale, as well as being its head spy master, assassin, and diplomat. These 3 positions are known as the prime body of Echiness. So, Liam, what's it like to spend a day in Echiness? The city is on a fixed schedule. Early to bed, early to rise. The city begins to awaken at 4 a.m., as you will hear skirmish school recruits running and conditioning through the streets. So good luck sleeping in. There are strict sunset quiet hours within the city, so no late night silly excursions here. It's not your typical town guard patrolling the city either, but some of the nation's finest military members, as Echiness is a well-protected city due to the flesh forges. A year in Echiness is heavily documented and regimented, as watchers are on active duty for 6 months and in study the other 6. In study doesn't mean sit back and relax. It means study so that they can continue to move up within the ranks of the military to one day work closer to the city. Generally speaking, the lower rank you are in the military, the further you work away from it, the city, starting with working in the mana wastes. The higher rank you are, the more access to the city you have, magical spells, and better living quarters. It's an interesting incentive program that I, as a GM, am a huge fan of. Now, on to the final city I will cover, Anopian. Anopian, the city of alchemists. Well, alchemists, arcanists, and druids, to be more precise. At first glance, the city looks like it's encased in a glass orb, which it is, and many believe that it is because it would provide a year-round greenhouse effect. In reality, it's there to house the arcane fauna that literally wouldn't survive otherwise. A city that was once built around an ancient arcane lake that had cleansing properties has now expanded over the lake and tainted the waters with so much magical and alchemical refuse that it has turned into an ooze-filled water simply known as the Bath. Anopian is a 15th level settlement with a population of 8,900, 86% human, 5% gnomes, 2% Gorons, and 7% other. The primary languages spoken are Kelish, Osiriani, and Vudrani. The socially accepted deities are Akriti, Abadar, Calistria, Hagenti, Irori, Lamashchu, Mahathala, Nethys, and Pharasma. Its unique characteristic is alchemical accidents. In Anopian, you can find just about anything alchemical, but if you make a wrong move, you might end up sleeping in goop. The settlement's level is 20 for the purpose of determining what alchemical items are available. Most non-hostile NPCs begin with an attitude one step better than usual towards alchemist, just in case. As a game master, I would recommend that the formulas are available up to level 20, but the items are only up to level 19. The reason I say this is because the city's master alchemist is level 19, which would make it strange that the alchemists in the city or shops in the city would be able to offer you items better than their best crafter. Having access to the formulas and making it to where your player or players are successful in crafting those level 20 items would make them even more valuable to the city. Could even be an interesting high-level adventure. There are 4 prominent locations within Anopian. The first location is the Apothecine. This is the massive tower that lies within the center of the city. It is where the city's best alchemists reside. There are only 99 positions available, and the competition to land one is fierce. Alchemists from all over Galarian, and even alchemists from other planes of existence, compete for the positions within the Apothecine. Materials are paid for, labs fully staffed, and a killer view of the city from your residence. It's an alchemist's wet dream. The second location is one I mentioned earlier, the Bath. This sentient, hive-minded ooze is the result of the city's errant experiments, discarded magic, and inconvenient victims. It can retain the memories of those it has consumed. Although many of the city's best and worst secrets reside within it, it is not recommended that you get nearby it, as that is exactly what it wants. The ooze can even cast beautiful prismatic illusions to lure victims below the surface. That's right, it's a spell-casting ooze. The third location is the Draft of Forever. Even though it is Anopian's most recent tavern to be built, it is definitely proven to be the most attractive. Known for its bars, lounges, and dens filled with indulgences of exceptional quality, this tavern is above and beyond what a typical tavern would ever offer, especially on this side of the inner sea. It even has live entertainment on a bi-weekly basis, but its business hours are also unique. It is open 6 straight days a week, and it is busy most of these hours, even in the middle of the night. The fourth and final prominent location is the Residential Ring. If the name didn't give it away, this is the ring that surrounds the city, which is where most of the residents of Anopian reside. Also called the Ring, it is divided into 5 segments based on whichever factory it is closest to, which are located around the dome made of glass in a nearly perfect spaced-out design. The ancestral diversity in Anopian isn't as wild as one would find in Quantium, but you will not find a more dense population of Goran anywhere in Galarian, as this is where Gorans were created and achieved sentience and citizenship in the first place. The Gorans created many of Nex's robust cuisine culture, and many culinary traditions and celebrations have come from it. The Gorans went from being what were originally supposed to be super plants to the most protected people within Anopian. Because of their ability to return to life with all of their memories after seeding themselves, Gorans are heavily protected by the law within the city. There are Goran flesh traffickers known as wilters, who will find Gorans, abduct them, kill them, harvest their flesh, and sell it in Garund as a rare delicacy. Gorans are allowed to sell their own flesh if they are willing, as it can grow back, but wilters take it to a whole new extreme. The other ancestry that resides within the city are the flesh-warped. Although most of them reside in the still, or the sewers, these people come from all walks of life. Most came from the mana wastes or are a result of an amoral flesh-warper who changed their life forever, causing them to be cast out of whatever social circle they were once a part of. Over the last few hundred years, they have started, to become more accepted by the common folk within Nex, let alone Galarian. Game masters, you really need to emphasize the social disparity in your game. Fleshforged are a heavily stereotyped ancestry for a reason. Allow that character to conquer that disparity and prove to people that looks aren't everything. If the Flesh Forge aren't even generally accepted amongst the people where they were created, it is hard to imagine and make the argument that they would be accepted with open arms anywhere else. But we can continue that discussion in the comments section below. To many people's surprise, Anopian is wrought with paranoia amongst its people. This is primarily due to the stiff ladder of competition between alchemists clawing their way to the top so they can live in the ivory tower that is the Apothecine. Even when they do, the secrets they keep to progress their alchemical goals can become even more tightly kept, whether for good or evil. Many outsiders fall prone to being part of an alchemist's experience. Insert fun one-shot where you have to find the antidote to reverse the effect of an alchemist's deadly concoction here. The wiser alchemists who have rooms within the Apothecine don't even reside within their rooms most of the time, but will instead rent them out to power-hungry alchemists who are willing to pay hand over fists to quell the desire of living in a space of such high status. There are 3 major factions within Anopian. The first is the Anopian Fleshforges Guild. This iteration of the guild was formed in the wake of the evisceration in Echiness. The original guild was created during the height of the war between Nex and Geb to restore the damage done to the Fleshforges of Echiness, as well as to figure out techniques and methodologies to protect the Fleshforge creation and soldiers of Nex and protect them against necromantic energies they would face on the battlefield. Unfortunately, after the open war had subsided, a lot of dark money and secret projects were found to have taken place within the guild, so it was disbanded. This new iteration was founded after the evisceration, so long as the master alchemist Barume would oversee it and focus on the upcoming war efforts and Nex's defensive capabilities. The second faction is the Hagentes Mask, what most would call a stain on the alchemical reputation of Anopian. This faction consists of the darker deals that the original Anopian Fleshforges Guild made in its prior founding. It is known for its cruel history and former leader Dulin Tro, a drow refugee from the Darklands who successfully reshaped his well-liked 13-year-old prodigal human assistant's face to bear the face of his demon lord he praised, Hagenti. Needless to say, that didn't go over well. Experimenting on minors is a big no-no. But before Dulin was brought to court, his demon lord blessed him with the ability to craft a mask that allows one to change their appearance for a day in exchange for a sleepless night filled with your worst nightmares. Hence, the name of the faction. The third major faction is the Unwarped. This faction stands against all of the cruelties and atrocities that have been committed within the walls of the city. Flesh-warped activists, former visitors who were kidnapped and experimented on by flesh warpers or foul worshippers of the Hagentes Mask, or operations that were done by the government in secret. What gives this faction more fuel is that it is in fact allied with the Bath below the city. So they hold a trove of secrets that they expose to the citizens of the city by protesting around the factories within the ring. Unfortunately, revealing such secrets and truths has caused the deaths of many of the faction's members, but this does not stop them from bringing the city's dark truths to light. I myself am convinced that Abadar is not a fan of Barume, the master alchemist and head of the city. He is the equivalent of Hasbro to Dungeons and Dragons. It's all about the money. Forget about the local atrocities in the city, as long as it doesn't affect the bottom line and cash flow within Anopian. Barume will make whatever deals within the Council of 3 and 9 to ensure that his lab and the Apothecine maintains its status and reputation. There are many important faces within Anopian outside of Master Alchemist Barume. There is Jandirish a male drow flesh warper who is the current leader of the Hagentes Mask. Ki Najdari, a female gnome activist who is the current leader of the Unwarped. Zane Faltriz, a male human researcher who is one of the rising pioneers of Anopian's Fleshforge Guild. Celine, a Goran chef whose reputation comes from reaching the exceptional Goran age of 60. Alexevny Zhigare, a human male noble who is known for his real estate dominance in Anopian, while representing the Zhigare family of Chiliacs. Padale, a female gnome thief, an infamous gnome burglar and fence who wanders the inner city looking for alchemy labs and houses to steal from. Although it may sound fairly odd, a day in Anopian will often be remembered best through the smells you encountered. Floral smells, peaty smells, alchemical smells, and if you're in the right spot, the smells of food and drink. But be sure to keep your nose alert for any seductive fragrances, as you are likely being led toward the bath. A year in Anopian is quite an experience indeed. The first thing you'll notice is the minor allergy you will form when exposed to Anopian's open air for more than a day or two. This is known as still fever, but don't worry, you'll acclimate to it within a few weeks. The dome over the central part of the city has large ventilation windows that open every third week of the calendar month, and it is a week that allows the city's air and people to decompress, breathe, and relax, as it lets out all of the excess heat generated alchemical concoctions, magical experiments, or anything else that would be toxic to breathe in long term and need to be ventilated out. These ventilation weeks are generally when visitors visit the city, as the floral scents are the most potent during this time, as well as the beautiful lights that can be seen at night. It also allows you to feel like you are in the spring or summer, even if outside of the dome it is the dead of winter. In contrast, the first week of each month is the busiest one, as the city's products are sent out into Garund. This cycle continues throughout the year until the dead of winter in Calistral, the second month of the year, as the most of the city will slow down production and reflect on the year's results in preparation for the city's major holiday, Gorusan. This holiday is named after the druid Gorus, who created, you guessed it, the Gorans. The celebration includes making costumes out of dying plants and leaves as the entire city comes together for one enormous potluck. Anopian is a mile wide in diameter and is almost a perfect circle. It isn't a metropolis, but it's no small city. That's a big-ass potluck. Thank you for joining me in getting to learn about the other major cities within Nex. Do y'all want a similar series for Geb? Or do y'all want me to do Urgathoa, deity of disease, gluttony, and undeath next? Let me know in the comments section below. If you haven't checked out the 2 actual play podcasts I'm running, links below for that as well. If you want to help support the content I provide here, links below, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Take it easy.